The Russia-Ukraine conflict is a tragedy, a complex tapestry of historical grievances, geopolitical maneuvering, and nationalistic fervor. Yet, beneath the surface, a darker narrative festers. This is the story of the far-right's insidious rise within Ukraine, a story often obscured by mainstream narratives. It's a story of Western involvement, of geopolitical chess games played with the lives of Ukrainians. The conflict did not erupt in a vacuum. Understanding the current situation necessitates a deep dive into the years preceding the 2022 escalation. We must examine the ghosts of the 2014 Euromaidan revolution, the rise of extremist elements within Ukraine, and the West's role in shaping the narrative. The presence of far-right elements within Ukrainian society, particularly within its military and political spheres, is undeniable. This dark undercurrent has been exploited, perhaps even nurtured, by external forces seeking to advance their own agendas. This is the story of the Ukraine conflict untold. Ukraine's history is scarred by the wounds of extremism. The spectre of World War II-era Nazi collaborators continues to haunt the nation's psyche. This dark legacy, far from being relegated to the dustbin of history, has found new life in the 21st century. Far-right ideologies, fueled by economic hardship and social unrest, have taken root in fertile ground. Groups espousing ultra-nationalist, even neo-Nazi sentiments have proliferated, particularly in the wake of the 2014 Euromaidan uprising. These groups, often characterized by their violent rhetoric and actions, have gained a foothold in Ukrainian society, their influence seeping into the very institutions meant to protect the nation, the military and the government. This resurgence of extremism is not merely a domestic issue. It has attracted foreign fighters and sympathizers, drawn to the conflict by a shared ideology of hate. Among the numerous far-right groups that have emerged in Ukraine, the Azov Battalion stands out for its notoriety and influence. Founded in 2014 amidst the chaos of the Euromaidan revolution and the ensuing conflict in the Donbas region, Azov quickly gained a reputation for its military prowess and its extremist ideology. Initially a volunteer militia, Azov attracted a motley crew of Ukrainian nationalists, far-right extremists, and foreign fighters, united by their opposition to Russia and their embrace of violence. Despite its extremist views and alleged human rights abuses, Azov was officially incorporated into the Ukrainian National Guard in 2014, a move that legitimized the group and provided it with state funding and training. This integration raised serious concerns among international observers, who questioned the Ukrainian government's commitment to tackling far-right extremism. Azov's transformation from a fringe militia into a unit of the Ukrainian armed forces is a stark reminder of the dangers of normalizing extremism. The influence of far-right elements in Ukraine extends beyond paramilitary groups like the Azov Battalion. Over the years, these groups have steadily increased their presence within the Ukrainian government and political system, raising concerns about their impact on the country's democratic institutions and the rule of law. Several high-ranking Ukrainian officials have been linked to far-right organizations or have espoused extremist views. These individuals have used their positions of power to advance their ideologies, often with impunity. Their presence within the government has normalized extremist rhetoric and policies, creating a climate of fear and intimidation for those who dare to oppose them. This infiltration of far-right elements into the Ukrainian government has eroded trust in state institutions and fueled polarization within society. It has also hampered efforts to find a peaceful resolution to the conflict in the Donbas region. The 2014 Euromaidan revolution, often portrayed as a spontaneous uprising against corruption and Russian influence, was a pivotal moment in Ukraine's recent history. However, a closer examination of the events reveals a more complex and troubling narrative, one marked by Western involvement and the exploitation of popular grievances for geopolitical ends. The protests that erupted in Kiev's Maidan Square in late 2013 were sparked by then-President Viktor Yanukovych's decision to suspend negotiations on an association agreement with the European Union in favor of closer ties with Russia. While genuine public anger at corruption and government overreach fueled the initial demonstrations, it soon became clear that external actors were playing a significant role in shaping the course of events. Western governments, particularly the United States, openly supported the protesters, providing financial and logistical assistance. The Euromaidan protests ultimately led to Yanukovych's ouster and the installation of a pro-Western government in Kiev. The extent of Western involvement in the Euromaidan revolution goes beyond public pronouncements of support. Leaked documents and intercepted phone calls paint a picture of behind-the-scenes maneuvering. A leaked phone conversation between Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt is particularly damning. Nuland discusses with Pyatt who should be in the next Ukrainian government, naming specific individuals. This conversation revealed the cynical calculations behind the West's support for the Euromaidan protests. The EU's failure to deliver on promises of visa-free travel and economic prosperity added to the disillusionment. The West's actions in Ukraine have been characterized by double standards and broken promises. Since the outbreak of the conflict in eastern Ukraine in 2014, the United States and its NATO allies have poured billions of dollars in military and financial aid into Ukraine. This aid, while intended to help Ukraine defend itself, has prolonged the conflict and increased the suffering of the Ukrainian people. The influx of Western weapons has fueled an arms race, emboldening both sides to pursue military solutions rather than diplomatic ones. The Ukrainian government, bolstered by Western support, has shown little interest in engaging in meaningful dialogue with the separatists. Moreover, military aid has raised concerns about escalation and the potential for these weapons to fall into the wrong hands. The presence of far-right extremist groups within the Ukrainian military, some implicated in war crimes, raises the specter of further atrocities. The West's unwavering support for Ukraine, despite the country's well-documented problems with corruption, far-right extremism, and its role in the current conflict, raises serious questions about the true motives behind this policy. Some analysts argue that the West's endgame is to weaken Russia by bogging it down in a protracted conflict in its backyard. By providing military and financial assistance to Ukraine, the West can keep the conflict simmering, draining Russian resources and undermining its international standing. This strategy, however, comes at the expense of the Ukrainian people, who are caught in the crossfire of a geopolitical chess game. Others suggest that the West sees Ukraine as a potential springboard for NATO expansion eastward, further encroaching on Russia's traditional sphere of influence. Regardless of the West's ultimate objectives, its actions in Ukraine have been counterproductive and have only served to exacerbate the conflict. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is a tragedy on many levels. It is a tragedy for the Ukrainian people, who have been caught in the crossfire of a geopolitical struggle not of their own making. It is a tragedy for the principles of international law and diplomacy, which have been trampled underfoot in the pursuit of narrow national interests. And it is a tragedy for the cause of peace and security in Europe, which has been dealt a severe blow by the resurgence of Cold War tensions and the specter of nuclear confrontation. The conflict in Ukraine is a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked nationalism, the corrosive influence of propaganda, and the human cost of geopolitical gamesmanship. This conflict has exposed the hypocrisy of the West, which has for years preached the virtues of democracy and human rights, while simultaneously supporting authoritarian regimes and turning a blind eye to far-right extremism when it suits its interests. The legacy of this conflict will be one of blood and deceit, a testament to the folly of those who prioritize power over peace. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is not merely a regional conflict. It has global implications. The world watches with bated breath as the situation unfolds, acutely aware that the stakes have never been higher. The specter of nuclear war, once relegated to the realm of Cold War paranoia, has re-emerged as a chilling possibility. The conflict has exposed the fragility of the post-Cold War world order, revealing the fault lines of a system struggling to cope with the resurgence of great power competition and the rise of new global challenges. It has also highlighted the dangers of a world increasingly divided along ideological lines, where dialogue and diplomacy are replaced with threats and ultimatums. We stand at a crossroads. The path we choose as an international community will determine the fate of Ukraine, the future of Europe, and perhaps the very survival of our planet.